Welcome to the Marino Show. I'm your host, David Marino. I'm here at the Alamo Drafthouse Village Theater in Austin, where we are taking a look back at the 1991 cult classic Scary Movie, the original Scary Movie. It was shot here in Austin over 30 years ago and has since gained a reputation as an inventive entry in the horror genre. I'm speaking with co-writer and director Daniel Erickson, along with the film's composer, Hank Hehmsoth. Well, Daniel and Hank, it's so great to have you today, especially having director, co-writer of the film, and the composer together, which you usually don't have, at least I haven't in my interviews. And am I right to say this is the first time y'all have done an interview together about the film?
That's
Absolutely.
correct.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited to be the one that kind of helped that along. When we talk about the original Scary Movie from 1991, which is a cult classic that was shot here in Austin, when you think back to that time, and both of you can answer this, what was it about that time that kind of blended in with the film and the atmosphere? Because the atmosphere was a haunted house. It's a horror movie. Mm-hmm. It has comedic timing as well, which I love. But when you think back at that time, 1991 Austin, how do you feel the film kind of holds up and kind of shows our time?
Well, I'd say in the 80s was when the slasher film was popular. Yeah. And you've had the Friday the 13th and the Halloweens, and it was pretty fresh at the time. And I'd say our film kind of does a twist on it. We were making a dark comedy about the slasher film. And in some ways, I think when people came to see Scary Movie, they were expecting a slasher film, and they got something a little bit different, a dark comedy and more of a thriller and a twist on slasher films. And it threw people at the time. But I think now the movie maybe holds up better than back then, because the movie's not just a slasher film. It offers something more psychological horror.
Right, and that was a really creative period of time, I think, the late 80s and the 91s. We had a Democratic governor, Ann Richards, and people were doing experimental things like putting films together, et cetera. So I think that was an interesting time period, which is not like it is today.
It was a very creative time in Austin back in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah,
for sure.
And also, you brought something up which makes me think, you were ahead of the curve in terms of doing something different in a horror film and turning it kind of on its head, because that was before Scream and kind of the kind of poking fun at the horror genre.
Exactly.
And I think that's really interesting that you did it before it was a trend, before it was a thing, which that has to feel good knowing that you kind of set that path, even though maybe at the time you weren't recognized for it. When you look back at that film, or when I watched it, it did combine horror and comedy, which was not the case I grew up watching all the 80s slasher flicks, and that was not the case. They didn't blend comedy and horror. Now you see it all the time. Mm-hmm. But I think what was the inspiration behind the film, and how did it come about, going down that path to the comedy horror things?
I didn't realize it at the time, but later I was thinking what influenced me, and there was a movie called After Hours by Martin Scorsese that was in the 80s. Mm. And it was a dark comedy about a guy having a bad night, and just everything that could go wrong was going wrong in this one night. And I think that subconsciously was on my mind when I wrote Scary Movie, approaching it as a dark comedy, where just somebody having a really bad night. And just recently I saw an interview with Tobe Hooper, who directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, right.
And in the interview, he said it's about the first thing he said in the interview was it was about having a really bad day. Yeah, and he says everybody in this movie is having a bad day. And I related to that because that's kind of how I was approaching Scary Movie.
And your main character has a really bad night.
He has a really
haunted house.
It's the story takes place one night, and exactly, he has a really bad night.
No kidding.
Now, when it came to the actual music in the film, which music is always integral to any film, but especially horror films, we were talking before we started this interview, and I love collecting horror movie soundtracks. I love the music in this film because it's reminiscent of some of the stuff in the 80s that was going on, but it kind of had a fresh spin on it. It didn't feel like, I think a lot of what at least I would hear in some of the films in the 80s that were trying to copy each other, they do the same kind of, like they take the John Carpenter Halloween theme, but do a different variation of it, but you knew they were kind of copying it, where this was fresh and new. So how did that come about, and how did you two get together and meet about doing the music for the film?
We were both working together at the same place in the Arboretum, and I was a musician there, and we just kind of connected that way. And I had all this high-tech gear and an interest in doing things, particularly his movie. So I had access to all this high-tech gear, and I'd be happy to talk about that. I had an Amiga video toaster, which was really weird, a Yamaha C1 music computer that had SMPTE code and MIDI built in. I had a frame-accurate VHS tape, and also had a portable Sony DAT recorder. And I thought I'd just create some sounds on the fly. I also had an orchestral sound library that I could run on a Akai S1000 sampler. So Daniel wanted the movie to have like a quality to it, so we tried to do some orchestral things to raise it above being a low budget. So I had a chance to write some really interesting music for it that probably nobody had used prior to that.
Halloween day, convicted killer John Lewis Barker is being returned back to the federal facility for the criminally insane tonight.
I loved going out into the world and doing stuff and recording things. There used to be a thing called a Super Ball, and I went to the UT and got a grand piano, and when you rub it along the bass string, you get the weirdest sounds. I recorded that. You can take an orchestral gong and roll it with a soft mallet, and while it's rolling, you drop it into a bucket of water. And I don't know, recording elevator sounds, and it was just fun to put all of that together.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when I met Hank, I thought he was way overqualified for our little horror film. And he's a classically trained pianist, and so he played Mozart and all this, right? Yeah. And so, I thought I was over my head in asking him if he'd do the music. But then when I asked him, he said, hell yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, that was going to be fun. I was getting rid of all the classical stuff and playing jazz by then too. So yeah, I looking forward to do something new.
But he did a lot of experimental stuff. And I did collect movie soundtracks on vinyl, like you said you do. And most of them were like Bernard Herrmann, the synthesized, not synthesized scores. And I was asking Hank if he could try to get a sound that wasn't like the Halloween, which was synthesized.
Yeah.
And so I think he achieved that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one place I remember that I'm really proud of where it's like this augmented harmony thing that's atonal, and I got all these pizzicato string notes to play random and just in a blur but it sounds real because they're real string samples. And that's like one of the high points in the movie for me. scene with the snake pit. And we
Okay.
dropped down there because that's called Mickey Mousing, which is a Disney effect where, like, when Mickey would hit Goofy on the head, the music would be right there, and I could go through and line up exactly moments, like when he hit the floor and the snakes and everything. That was really fun.
One of my favorite moments of your music is when Warren falls in the pumpkins.
Yeah.
And because I'm hearing the piano like a literal piano, like you weren't trying to make it sound like something else.
Yeah.
But I just love the piano music there.
There's another thing where I had some a clothesline with chains and run through and we get the chains to roll, and we had Tibetan gongs. So it was a lot of fun, something I'd never done before.
But this was new for us because this is my first feature film and Hank's first feature.
Yeah.
Just about everybody that worked on this movie, it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
And it actually, you said, premiered here in this theater, right?
That's correct. 34 years ago, the movie premiered in this theater, and so that's why we like coming back every year to this theater.
To show it like in October, right?
Exactly.
And, if you're around Austin, you might have seen this book that outlines everything about the film. I see it at the record stores that I go to. It's there on display. You can buy it. When you think back to, we were talking also a little earlier about the process of making an indie film in the early 90s and how that was a very different process than it was today. When I watched the film, yes, you've told me it's an indie movie, but I see it like as it was done so well, the edits, the set, like all of that looks, when you think back to that time and how much work that took, that is so different from today. So give me a little insight into, from the sets to the film, actually being shot on film. That was a big undertaking at that time for an indie project.
Well, our film was a true independent movie. It was made, we raised about $100,000, and it was shot in 3 weeks. And it was shot on 16 millimeter film. And I always say about a third of the people that worked on this film did not get paid at all. And then a third of the people got paid just a little bit. And then maybe a third of the people got paid kind of normal wages. And so for the majority of the people that worked on this, it was very much a learning experience, but we shot it very rapidly, and but it was a great experience.
And back then, shooting on film, you really had to get it right. Like you couldn't do a ton of takes. They really had to get it down, right? Because that was expensive.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd say, like, as a rule of thumb, I was trying to get everything in take 2 or take 3, and then we'd move on, with some exceptions. But they always talk about a filming ratio, and so we had a 4-to-1 ratio from what I recall. So if the movie's an hour and a half, we had 6 hours of film,
Wow.
and so you get all your angles and everything, and you can eat up that film pretty fast. And so we had to shoot at a rapid rate and get it quick.
Now, where was it actually shot?
So just outside of Austin, where the Salt Lick is located, in Driftwood, Texas. It was about 25 minute drive out of Austin, and we were in the woods for most of the time.
And the haunted house, did y'all build that? And all?
Yes.
And you had like another stage on set?
So the art department was really critical because the majority of this movie takes place at a haunted house. And an extravagant haunted house. And so the art department was very special. And it was headed up by Robert McBride, Tommy Bauman, and Danny Garrett. And it's kind of like the whole movie hinged on these guys because it was all about the haunted house, and the facade of the haunted house was a big feature of the film. And then it was the individual rooms. And, the movie takes place in one night, and it's all there at the haunted house.
And I came in post-production, so I wasn't there that much. But in post-production, we were at the old TMPS, the Texas Motion Picture Studio. which was this cavernous place that's got all these virtually antique gear in there. You could get lost in one of those little rooms for 12 hours and nobody knew you were in there. But
it was editing facilities, it was sound facilities.
With sprockets on the film where you could go through and run things slow. And it had a mini stage where there was where you could run the show, and we did a demo of early shots for Austin investors one afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great place.
A lot of movies flowed through this facility, but Blood Simple, made by the Coen brothers, used that facility. Mm-hmm. And I want to say the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas used it for their dailies, and Slacker. And so just every movie that's been shot in Austin used Texas Motion Picture Service.
Yeah.
It was quite the place, but it's no longer, because once film was obsolete, everything film related started folding in this town.
Yeah.
What was it like when the film came out? What do you remember about whether it was the premiere or just after the film came out, what critics said about it? What was that process like, rolling it out to the public?
I mean, it was received well. We only we showed it here in Austin. We never really got good distribution with the film because we slipped through the cracks between it wasn't a slasher film enough to appeal to the horror people, but then the art crowd said that's too much of a horror film for us. And so we fell somewhere in the middle. And so we had difficulty until just 30 years later, we get a distribution deal with AGFA, which is the American Genre Film Archive. And the films had a second life. And it seems like people are appreciating it more now than they did back then. Mm-hmm. But at the time it was released, we got positive reviews. The critics liked it. It just never made that connection at the time.
And for you, Hank, seeing it, and seeing your work paired with the film, obviously being involved in the editing process with where I guess the music went, how did it feel seeing your score come to life with, the acting and all of the...
It was great. I didn't know it was going to be quite like that. It was all put together. And the composers in films usually don't get a lot of attention.
Right.
But there's actually a review out where I got a couple paragraphs from a guy saying the ominous chord beds were unique and that it was 20 years ahead of its time. So I was real pleased with all of that. It came out really well.
It's a quiet Halloween night. For just a few dollars, this place offers more than a few thrills.
This year, we're going to give more than their money's worth.
Are you going to get a ticket, or are you going to get a ticket?
Psycho killer escapes on Halloween night. Yeah, right.
I must have taken a wrong turn or...
Dang right you took a wrong turn, or...
At its core, it's about fear and paranoia and a suspicion, and so that's why the music played such a big part, because it's the main character is Warren, and it's getting inside his head and that paranoia, and so the movie's reliant on that score.
You mentioned Warren, so I got a little story. This is like the dawn of digital signal processing then. Nobody had done this before. And Ivan, there's a scene in there where the girl says Warren, but it was filmed in slow motion. So when you look at her mouth, it's Warren, but the sound was like really short, and you couldn't mess with tape back then. If you did, it would lower the So I had a...
So you were trying to stretch the audio.
You're right. And so there was a new product that I had on my software on my computer that did time stretching without pitch conversion, and we got the exact time and stretched her voice out so that it went Warren, and And Ivan thought that was the coolest thing because he was so back in tape. So that was a neat story.
Am I a chemistry?
Well, they seem to be okay to me.
Oh, Warren, here's Barbara.
You had all locals from this area. What was the casting process like? Do you remember how that went about? Did you put an ad in the paper? What was it like back
I don't
then?
remember the specifics, but I know we cast it pretty fast because, I mean, we were a low budget film, and part of me was like, I'm happy with getting anyone to fill this role because we were kind of desperate at times. But we did have a casting call, and I'd say on average, maybe half a dozen people would show up for a part. And John Hawkes was the only character we did not do a casting call. I just hired him knowing his credentials and having met him. I thought he was just perfect for the lead, and so we never did casting for the lead. And he ended up being great.
And he's gone on to, of course, do some big things. The last thing I saw him in, the latest season of True Detective, and he was so good in that, but I didn't connect. I had to go back and look, okay, what's he looks familiar. I was like, wow, that was him. He was so good in that.
And he was nominated Best Supporting Actor for True Detective, as well as he was nominated for Winter's Bone, Best Supporting Actor. And that's really helped put Scary Movie in the spotlight with John Hawkes having all this success.
And he was so young in the movie.
He was so young.
Yeah.
You were saying, though, that helped get him to LA, right? This film?
Yes, he says that it put just enough money in his pocket after making Scary Movie to go to Hollywood. And it wasn't like instant fame. He worked hard out there for maybe 5 more years before things started kicking in. But he said it paid his way to go to Hollywood.
Yes. How does it feel now in 2025 that this film, I've seen this everywhere, so it's definitely getting attention. You're doing your October showings of it as you do every year, but that there is more of a reevaluation of it. There's more of, it has a cult following, but how does it feel having that kind of full circle moment where maybe you didn't get as much attention when it initially came out, but it really has stuck around? Because although I had not seen it before, I had seen things about this movie everywhere because it's so Austin based. How has that felt, though, kind of seeing that come back around?
I mean,
you can both talk about.
It's been great that it's had a second life, literally. And this all started about 5 years ago when we got the deal with AGFA. And 1 year after that, lo and behold, Scary Movie shows on Turner Classic Movies, and we had to check to see which Scary Movie are they talking about. And I made a call and they said, no, it's your Scary Movie. And so somebody at Turner Classic Movies likes us. And so that was kind of the kickstart of the film becoming a cult film, because we never had national exposure until then.
There was a period where it was really dead and nothing was happening at all. And yet,
like 30 years.
Yeah. I had transferred the original VHS over to digital and put it on my YouTube channel, and it got covered a lot with a lot of comments. And that's where we got some kind of international recognition too. I had a guy in Canada who shows only VHS in movie theaters, and he bought a copy of the VHS tape. There's a collector in London that bought a copy of it. So it spread.
Yeah, I get contacted from people in different countries asking me for like VHS copies and whatnot.
There's
so
some kind of cult thing about playing old VHS tapes.
Well, it's interesting because they do a lot of VHS swaps here in Austin. That's a huge thing now. But I also think just we went to all digital. We went from 8-track to cassette tape to CD with, film. We went from, video cassette to DVDs. Now everything is streaming with music and film today. But I think because of that, what I've seen, there has been this resurgence of going back to what we all used to listen to or watch, whether it's VHS. I think or vinyl. I think
everything comes back around.
And I also think people are craving that time period. I don't know, like
Exactly.
I miss the liners that you would read in an album. I miss the VHS artwork. And you don't get that with the streaming. Although streaming's convenient for all of us, I think that has also helped with some of the films like Scary Movie to bring back that, I don't want to call it retro, but bring back that feeling that you had when you would watch a VHS or an album.
Physical sensation of holding an album in your hand and seeing the artwork.
Exactly.
I love that.
Reading, or a VHS tape that's got all that info on it.
And I miss that.
Yeah.
I miss that so much. And so I think that probably also has something to do with hopefully the resurgence of it. Go ahead.
I wanted to tell you about the title real quick.
Yes, I wanted to thank you for mentioning that.
There's been confusion because we are the original Scary Movie in 1991. And there's a little story behind that. And I don't know if you know the details, but 5 years afterwards, we see in the Hollywood Reporter that a movie from Hollywood is going to be called Scary Movie. And so I had my attorney send a letter saying, please don't use that title. We've already got that title. And they obliged, and they did change it to Scream. So Scary Movie, the second Scary Movie, changed their title to Scream, and that's why that's called Scream. Then 5 years later, it happened again. Somebody announced, we're going to be Scary Movie, and then we sent the same letter saying, please don't use our title, but they didn't listen. And so they moved forward, and hence we've got that franchise Scary Movie combating with our title. But, you know, it's good that we're bringing awareness that we're the first Scary Movie.
Yeah, that's great.
That's interesting.
And that we affected the title of Scream. You know?
Yeah, I didn't know that part.
I didn't know that either. I didn't know that was the
it's pretty
original.
wild.
Yeah. And obviously the Scary Movies of today, that franchise is all comedy. It's completely making fun of, horror movies.
There's no relation.
No, there's no relation at all.
Story or it's just a title.
When you think back to that time, what was the inspiration? Like, were there filmmakers that you, I don't know, pattern yourself after, or that anybody that you looked at when you were making Scary Movie that was an influence in making that film?
I'd say there's just a lot of influence, but I'd have to say you'd have to go back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it was made in Austin. And so at least it was a sample of a low budget film that was made here in our town that was a huge success. And so we kind of modeled at least the production aspect off of it, and knowing that you can make a movie on 16 millimeter, you know, for about $100,000, which is what they had. And there's a little bit of influence of Chainsaw in our film, but
well, there's a literal chainsaw that he grabs in the film.
But you know, that movie After Hours was an influence. And like the movie is about paranoia, and like Duel comes to mind. The Spielberg,
Dennis Hopper.
Where or
was it not Dennis Hopper? Dennis Weaver.
Oh,
Dennis Hopper's filmmaker.
And it was all about phobia, and you know, and I think that was on my mind when I was writing this.
And it gives that vibe because Duel, he's being chased by this. You don't see the person driving this big 18-wheeler. My dad loved that movie, so we'd always watch that. It was an early Spielberg film, Duel. I think he was I don't know if he's a director, producer on it, but that's interesting that you say that, because throughout the film Scary Movie, your main character is like paranoid throughout the entire film. And then there's a twist, which I won't give that away for people who haven't yet seen it, so I want people to go watch it if they haven't. That does have that frenzy throughout the film, and he keeps getting more and more, it gets heightened as you go throughout the film.
And so I think I was into that. I always thought that in my mind there's another genre called the disturbing genre, and it's just movies that are disturbing. They're not necessarily horror films, but but you know. And so I was kind of going for something like that. But I was watching a lot of classic cinema at the time, and I was watching a lot of Hitchcock movies, and I didn't want this to be a slasher film, and so that was very much on my mind. I wanted to differentiate our film from a slasher film, but when people come to see our movie, that's kind of what they're expecting.
So I had an influence of Jerry Goldsmith movies, and he did at least 12 pure horror movies, as well as so many other movies that were just huge classics. And I've got a
Jerry Goldsmith being the composer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And so I've got, I listened to all of that stuff, and then Sirius XM had a 5-day, 8 hours a day dedicated when he passed away. They did all 200 of his movies, and I happened to be lucky enough to grab that off of Sirius XM, and I've got that on my website, and people from all over the world go and listen to that stuff and comment. So everything's in there from The Omen was one.
The Omen. I was going to say the Twilight Zone, the movie, was a Jerry Goldsmith score. And the segment that was called Terror at 20,000 Feet was
I love
all
that.
Well, that was another one about paranoia that was very much on my mind with Scary Movie. In fact, I think we watched it with John Hawkes, and I was nudging him to play it like that.
Oh, man.
But that's a Jerry Smith score.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith, yeah.
So you're a professor, right, at Texas State, and you're still very much involved in music. You do shows all the time. You know, where are you now with that? When you look back at this film, how did that play a role in your artistic path down?
Well, I didn't do a lot after that. I did a thing for the National Park Service, a documentary on Lady Bird Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done, as a musician, I've played on lots of film score things and jingles and bands.
And you played with Christopher Cross.
I played with Christopher Cross, played sax on the theme to Arthur, and we toured the world and made a lot of money for a little while. So yeah, I've just had a musical career, and doing film music is a real interesting part of it, and I'd like to be doing more of it.
And you did like music videos for Texas-based artists, right?
Yeah, that was pretty much where I went after making Scary Movie. Is I focused on music video production here in Austin, and I really enjoyed it. I almost felt like a musician myself, but I'm not a musician, but I hung out with a lot of them. Shooting these videos all over Austin.
Do you ever have any interest doing another film?
You know, perhaps. I feel like it's so much work making a movie that you really have to love the material because it's so much work. And I guess I haven't come across a subject matter yet that has reached the level of Scary Movie, because that kind of fed into all my interests. And it would take something extraordinary for me to get pulled back into it.
I talk about creativity in talks that in seminars that I get, and I mentioned that you need to have a strong backstory before you're interested in doing something, because you have to have the impetus and the willpower to follow it through to its end. So if you've got something that you've lived through that's in your center of your being, then that can produce something creative, and you'll stick it through till the end.
That makes sense.
I think also, thinking back to that time of 1991, I think one of the challenges must have been, especially if you were doing an indie film and you didn't have a studio backing. Today you have social media, you have all these avenues that you can promote your projects, whether it's music, film, whatever it is that you do. Back then, we had none of that. There was no internet. So it really depended on word of mouth. And I know that today, that's why I say today, if you did something, at least that would probably be, I don't know if it's easy, but at least you'd have your own, you could promote yourself.
I guess there's more product these days.
That's
like back
right.
then, you made a feature film and it was special. But now it's like you're one of thousands because it's so easy, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know which is better.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of miss the old kind of school way of doing things. Yeah.
But back when we made this, Austin was a much smaller city. It was about a fourth the size that it is now.
Yeah.
And I would say we used every resource available to us to make this film. And I'm talking about film equipment, lighting, the actors and the crew. It's like, we used just every resources the city had, and so we were very much on the cutting edge. Austin's a different city now. It's a much bigger city, and there's a lot of big movie production going on.
Right, but it's a career too now. But back then, people were doing this stuff because they were interested in it, because it was creative, and they gave free of themselves and put all their time in on things just because I'm in a movie. Now everybody's got to get paid.
Yeah.
But really, I when I look back on this movie, though, I do wonder, how did we do it? Because I don't think I could repeat it. And I honestly don't know how we survived through making it.
It was a time,
because it seems impossible now.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. What stands out to you? Have you had any interactions with either fans of the film, either one of you, or anything that surprised you even today? Does anybody mention it, or do you get emails, or what surprises you about the reaction?
First thing that comes to mind is, I'm surprised a lot by things here and there. But like this shirt, for instance, was designed by a super fan that lives in Kansas. And so I just happened to stumble upon that the shirt was online, and that's how I got this. And you got the shirt.
And I've got the original vintage one from 91.
Which is the generic. We were promoting it as a generic product. And so it was just a barcode, awesome. Like it's a generic product. That's the way.
And the barcode's still on this new feature.
But, when fans are making shirts, that's surprising.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to make sure we mention this year the screenings are dedicated, right, to one of the actors that has passed away.
That's correct. Ernie Teleferro, he played the Laughing Man. He passed this year, and so the screening at the Alamo Village is dedicated to him. And he was a huge personality of Austin. He was an amazing person,
and he's got that infectious laugh all through the movie. That's very characteristic.
He kind of steals the movie, to be honest.
He cracked me up because, I don't want to give too much away, but he would make fun of things and just start laughing. Even the ending of the film, there he is with the laugh, and it kind of wraps everything up just with the way it ends. I really liked his character in that. I thought he was really good, even though it was small. He'd throw him in here and there. It was really cool. Is there anything that you think of when you think of Scary Movie, whether it's from a music perspective or from the film? Is there anything you would do differently today if you were back then? Or there's anything you look at the film and think, I would have done this or I would have done that? Or do you look at it and think, this is exactly what I wanted to create? It was my vision. Whether it's music or film.
It's pretty close to being exactly the movie I wanted to make, and the areas that I wish things were different is money related,
right?
Because everything comes back to budget.
Yeah.
And when you're making a movie for a fixed low budget and you got to shoot it in 3 weeks, you just have to be disciplined and so sure, I would have liked to have done things differently, but it would have required more money. But given the restrictions, I'm really happy with how the movie turned out.
On my side, since I was in post-production, I had all the time in the world to do things. And I literally wasn't working, so I'd do stuff all day and all night long. And I don't think I would have changed it. I'm trying to think as a composer what I would have want to change. And I'm still real proud of the stuff I did then. I might do something slightly different, but it would be just because it's who I am now. But it has nothing to do with any negative about back then.
I feel like the stars really aligned for this film, because there are a good 10, 12 people that were critical to this movie. Hank would be one of them. And had these people not have been there, the movie might have not even been made, because, like John Hawkes would be another one. And so I just think we were really lucky that things fell into place and the right people at the right time. It was Keith Brunson and I were the instigators of the whole project. We came together and started raising the money. And
then there's Mike Tollison, who's like the most influential entertainment lawyer. He's one of the executive producers. Shall I tell that story about? So about 15 years ago, I had the original video. Did I already say this? I had the original video on my YouTube channel, and it got a strike from YouTube, and it said you can't put this on anymore. What? It was a company in Romania, and I went, that's just can't be true. And I told Mike Tullison. He said, I'll get back to you. And about 3 weeks later, they reinstated it and they banned this Romanian.
Over the years, films get pirated, and you really can't control what like other countries are doing with your movie. You know,
that's true.
But
Same with music.
the movie shows up in the weirdest places in foreign countries and stuff, but it's out of our control.
Yeah. The screenings, can you talk about the dates and the times when the screenings will be coming up?
On October 11th, We Love Video, which is a great intimate venue. And then
7 p.m.
October 15th, Alamo Village.
Here.
And 7 p.m. And that's the bigger venue. So we're looking forward to it.
And he and I will be on a Q&A, maybe on both of them, but definitely at We Love Video.
Oh, that's awesome. So people come out, they'll get to hear about making of the film and all of that.
And we're introducing a new poster this year that will be available at both screenings, and it's by artist Guy Juke, who is famous here in Austin for so many things. And so
all the old Armadillo World Headquarters posters. He's a guy who's been here since the 70s.
So it's going to be, we're looking forward to it.
And if people, you mentioned that it did come out on DVD. If people are looking for the film, can you find it online? If you want to watch it or buy it, where can you? I did find it on YouTube,
It's on
actually
Amazon.
streaming.
I'm not sure if there's any left anymore,
DVDs.
but we're in discussions of a new DVD next year. And in fact, that's what Guy Juke's art was for the new DVD. And then it got delayed. And so it's supposed to happen next year.
Cool.
But, you know, most movies, especially independent movies, they end up in the movie graveyard after so many decades, right? And so we're just fortunate that people are still watching our film after 30 years.
34 years?
So
Going out of the show, is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience that has supported this film over the past 30 plus years?
Well,
thank you for your support. And keep coming back. We'll be back every year.
Try to see it on the big screen when we show it because it's a treat on the big screen, right?
And we'll talk about it too after the show.
Absolutely.
And if you want to catch Scary Movie, you can watch it here at Alamo Drafthouse Village Theater on October 15th. October 11th, you can catch it at We Love Video.